Hebrew Israelites have this idea that Israelites are somehow Gentiles. Gentiles means non-Israelites. They go and try to misread the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, not realizing it's defining three terms. It's defining Gentiles, but then in parentheses, it says nations, people, and realize that the definition is for all of those. But because they don't understand that, and they don't want to go look in other Bible dictionaries, because all the other Bible dictionaries, when they're just defining Gentile, prove that it means non-Israelites. So we're going to go into it. We've already addressed all the handful of texts that they try to use that say Gentiles are Israelites. We've shown repeatedly, in fact, that that's not what it means. So we're going to now show that the Bible, both God himself and other Israelites, that's not what it means. So we're going to now show that the Bible, both God himself and other Israelites, still call them Israel, even when they're in idolatry, even when they're scattered. Now you'll say, oh, but doesn't it say in Hosea? They will be not a people. They will be not his people in Isaiah. Yes, that means Israel is not God's people anymore. It does not mean that they're not Israelites. So let's go into the Bible, and we're going to see, while scattered, while exiled to Assyria, while worshiping idols, they're still Israelite. This is 2 Kings 17:23. This is just the narrator, the author of the book, telling us. And it says, until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants the prophet, so was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. So even though they had been in idolatry, and even though they were carried away to Assyria, they were still Israel. Now here we see Hezekiah writing a letter, and it addresses the Israelites as children of Israel. 2 Chronicles 36. So the post went with the letters from the king and his princes throughout all Israel and Judah, and according to the commandment of the king, saying, Ye children of Israel, turn again unto the Lord. This is after the Assyrian exile, after he scatters them, after the divorce talked about in Hosea. And yet Hezekiah still refers to them as children of Israel. I
want to give all the praises and the honor to Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai Bahashim Recha HaKodash, and double honors to the elder apostles and the bishops of Great Millstone. Honors as well to the other elders and brethren, you fellow believers of the truth, and shalom to the elect. So anyway, this guy right here, he's pushing the Gentile narrative that whenever it says Gentiles, the Israelites always knew that they were Israelites, so they were never called Gentiles. And I believe the reason why he's pushing this doctrine, so he could say that the people that claim to be the people of the Most High never lost their way. So he's making a separation between Jew and Gentile. Now I did a video on Galatians 3:28. I'm not going to touch on that. When the original translation said Jew and Grecian. And we know that the Grecians were Greek-speaking Jews. The difference between Grecian and Hellenist and Helen is in the Hellene Jews, you had Israelites that were scattered amongst other people, right? And you had Jews who believed, and then you had unbelieving Jews. The Jews who believed, they had Jews that didn't make Greek their tongue, but then you had other Israelites that were scattered amongst other nations. And of course, if you're scattered amongst other nations, you will start following suit of their doctrine. So let's go to Deuteronomy 28:68. I was going to touch on that, but I'm going to go here. 48. Thou shalt serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and thirst, and nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. Then we go on down to 64. Somehow these Christians say that happened in 70 AD or before then. It has nothing to do with now, right? Because I guess after the crucifixion and the resurrection, there's no more prophecies to be fulfilled. Although he said he's coming back, and although he said all these things was going to happen up until the time he comes back, but for some reason, the worst atrocity ever committed on the face of the planet by one nation of people, nope, is not an act of God to these guys. So anyway, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even to the other. It's amazing how they would burn crosses in Negroes' backyards. I wonder why. And the one they claimed Jesus had died on that, which was not technically looking like that, but the image of it. So that's how you know we're the real Jews, right? We're the real people, right? And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. So I don't think this man even brought up the 10 lost tribes of Israel. I don't know. But the southern tribe was along with them as well. So yeah, they would all have been lost identity. And then you had the time, I don't get it. Why would he say that? But the southern tribe didn't lose their identity? Well, if the slave trade thing is true, right? And all through history, we were calling ourselves other things. Some of us would say, hey, we Egyptians, and wanted to be Egyptians, right? What about when there was people that had their years reckoned, right? And they didn't know who they were coming out of Babylon under Cyrus. They didn't know who the hell they were. Yeah, what about that? But we'll get more into it. Right? There thou shalt serve other gods with neither thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. Yeah, that Christianity, crooked Christianity, and that Islam. Before the Jesuits and the Christians came to the West Africas and various other places, we wasn't following that Christianity. In fact, some of us are still following portions of the Lord, and we was following our God, right? And these guys came over and force converted and said it was all in the manner of Christ. Yeah. His color don't matter now, but it did then when they gave it to us, didn't it? Anyway, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. By the way there I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, and there thou shalt be sold to your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Do you know another translation that say ye shall offer yourselves up? Yeah, thanks to all these different Hebrew translations. We're not going to get into that. We're not even allowed to go into that, but you do your research. Let's go to Matthew 4 and let's go to Matthew 4 and 14, right? It says, so what the prophet Isaiah had said came true, which was in Isaiah 9. The land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, on the way of the sea across the Jordan River, Galilee, where foreigners live. The people who lived in darkness, right, have seen the bright light, and the light has risen of those who live in the land overshadowed by death. So this is telling you what the prophet Isaiah said, because he says here, when Yahushua heard that John had been put in the prison, he went back to Galilee. He left Nazareth and made his home in Capernaum on the shores of the Sea of Galilee, right? This also proves that soldier that he was healed was an Israelite as well, right? The soldier, servant or something like that, right? Because we were in the army as well. You had centurions, which was captains of hundreds, right? This was the region of Zebulun and Naphtali, right? The land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali on the way of the sea, where it says in the other translation, let's go to the other translation. See, I left a comment to this guy. He's never going to get it. But Gentile is not a Hebrew nor even a Greek word, right? It was an actual universal word. that you can use for several different things, right? Well, it can apply to different things. Just like there's various English words that apply to different things. It says Galilee of the Gentiles. So let's go on to 1 Corinthians 12:2. Ye know that ye were pagans, somehow or other you were influenced and led astray to mute idols. So we see these translations, ye know that ye were Gentiles. Some say Gentiles, some say pagans, some say heathens. Let's go here. 1 Corinthians 12, this is the John Wycliffe Bible 1382. It says, for ye witten that ye weren't heathen men, how ye were led goyenge to dumb mantles, mamites. So we see here it's a word of heathen, which meant unbelievers. So you're going to tell me that Israelites wasn't unbelievers? Let's go to 1 Maccabees. Right, I'm just getting to the point. 1:11. It says, in those days went there out Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, let us go make a covenant with the heathen. Right? And the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein, that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise in Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathens. Okay, let me go here. Now this guy will say, well, they still knew they were Jews, or they still knew this. They just followed the customs of the heathens. When you start following the customs of the heathens, you start becoming the heathens and doing what the heathens do. Just like in our militaries, you have great so-called black leaders in the military. This is not their system. This is not their world, right? This is not their country, but they're doing it anyway. And they believe that they're American, don't they? Right? They still believe that they're American. In fact, they believe they're African and American. The only people that give two goddamn nationalities, so-called, to. Right? So let's go here. It's real simple, but let me go here. It says Greek, Hellene. All right, here we go. There's neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There's neither male or female, for ye all one in Yahushua. Right? I don't think I was going to go into that, but okay. Hellene. It says a Greek by nationality, whether a native or mainland or of the Greek islands or colonies. Right? In a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that made the language and the customs and the learning of the Greeks their own. Why? Because you had Jews that didn't. That's why it says all nations, not Jews. So there was Jews who knew, and then there was other Jews who practiced idolatry, right? And followed after the manners of the heathen, right? Because that's proof. When you go to Deuteronomy, let's see if we can get another one. When we go to Deuteronomy 28 and 64, as I just read, Deuteronomy 28, 64, I'm sure I'm going to look at some precepts real quick. Okay, Deuteronomy 28:64. I know it's one in Ezekiel. However, with the uplifted hand of the sword to them, the wilderness, that I would scatter them among the nations and disperse them throughout the lands. Let me see if there's another one. No, there's another one, Ezekiel. I will disperse you among the nations and scatter you throughout the lands. I will purge your uncleanness. Right? So this is why when you go on over here and you see the word Hellene, it says the word Grecian. But why does it say Grecian? Because when you go into, let me see here. When you go to Acts 6:1, let me type that in, Acts 6:1. And in those days, when the number of the disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews. Wait a minute. I thought they wasn't calling themselves different things. I thought they were always calling themselves Jews. Well, let's see what Grecians mean. Amongst the Grecians, right? G1675, Hellenistes. Let's see what it says.
Strong's G1675, Hellenistes. Hellenistes.
Yeah, one who imitates the manner and the customs of the worship of the Greeks and use the Greek tongue. Used in the New Testament, Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. So hold that. Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. So we go back here to Galatians 3:28, G1672. Remember, it said Jews born in foreign land and speaking Greek. It says here, in a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that made the language and the customs and the learning of the Greeks their own. So it makes sense that it was a Hellenist would say Jews born in foreign lands, right, and speaking the language. So right here, these Jews wasn't. So they didn't have to speak the Greek language. By the way, Greek is the multitude of nations. The Egyptians were speaking Greek after Ptolemy, right? You had the Arameans, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, it was certain regions, I want to be wrong, but it was a multitude of nations, because they had the whole known world. Not this side of the world, but they had that particular region, and the people, they would speak Greek. This is why it says, in a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that made the language and the customs and the learning of the Greeks their own. Right, but those other nations we just read in Acts 6:1 is the customs and the manners of the Greeks, using it the New Testament, Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. So we see, by process of elimination, we see that there were Jews in foreign lands. But here it says the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that they made the language and the learning the custom of the Greek their own. Because it's impossible to just separate and say it wasn't no Jew who was a Hellene, because we just read in Deuteronomy 28:64 and Ezekiel that the Israelites were scattered amongst all nations. So it's impossible to say, okay, since they're living amongst other nations, right, they didn't make that language their own. It's impossible, even though they were Jews. Right? Let's go to Acts real quick. Let's go to the book of Acts. Acts 2 and 5. Because you just can't say, okay, since there was other places, they were speaking the other languages. Right? You had Israelites amongst other nations speaking other tongues. Right? It says, and there were dwelling in Jerusalem Jews, devout men, which Cornelius was an Israelite. And we can Google that. They tell you on Google that the centurions, they just brought that out, by the way, that Jews was in the Roman army. Centurions too, by the way. Devout men out of every nation under heaven. The multitude came together and was confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language. Right. So they was different places, but they were speaking different languages. So wait a minute. Let's go back here to Grecian or Hellene. It says, in a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, right, that made the Greek and the language, the customs, and the learning of the Greeks their own. It's impossible to say it would be particularly all nations, not Jews, right? But it's talking about a particular Jew here. The other nations who had Jews among them were speaking other forms of dialects. Right? This is why I say here, they got confused. Remember we went over here to Grecian? This what Grecian mean, Hellenistes, right? Using the New Testament, Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. Remember it said that? That's Grecian, right? Hellenistes, but over here it says Hellene. But yet, they put Grecian here. Why did they do that? In fact, when you go to the older Bible, let's see, do I got Galatians 3:28 up? I know I have it up here somewhere. Well, actually, I don't. I was going to get Paul in Acts 13, but, you know. Galatians 3:28. Let's see what it says. I went to some other translations. What's the Bible before the 1611? It says here, there's neither Jew nor Armenian, neither servant nor free person. See that? It says neither Jew nor Armenian. Look, they know this, man. I'm going to try to find it. Is it the Geneva Bible? I think it's the Geneva Bible. Here we go. 1587. This predates. King James picked back up on this Bible, right? And after he died, it got completed. It says there's neither Jew nor Grecian, right? But the reason why they didn't put Grecian there, because when we go into Acts 6:1, it applies to the context there about the Grecians against the Hebrews. One group of Jews against another group of Jews. Wait a minute, I thought they were just all going to be called Jews, right? That's what I thought. I thought that's what he was saying, that Israelites was never called Gentiles. Where they were called everything else, they were called Greeks. And some translations say Jew and Greek. There's neither Jew nor Grecian, right? Which the only separation is Grecians is the ones that knew. That was using the Greek tongue, but in Galatians 3 they had Jews there that wasn't using the Greek tongue, but some were. This is why they got confused and they put Grecian, and then later on they changed it to Greek, right? So it is what it is, man. I mean, you can't make somebody believe it. I mean, when you look at, as I brought out, the Lord said in Jeremiah 17:4, you would discontinue from your heritage, your land. You would discontinue, you know, he's going to break us down. He's going to live. In 1 Samuel, he talks about how he put kings over other and the weak over the strong, right? So it makes sense that we lost our identity, okay? It wasn't just the 10 lost tribes. It was all the tribes. For whatever reason, the 10 lost tribes, yeah, they lost their identity. But the southern tribes stayed back and kept their identity. No, all of Israel lost their identity. That's why the scriptures say, awake, awake, the children of Israel. And this guy, this white guy, whoever he is, he cannot stop it, no matter what he tries to do. And there's nobody else that fit these prophecies like us. In Joel 3, when they sold a girl for a wine, a boy for a harlot, they was castrating the young men. Yeah, you forgot about that? Okay, I got a scripture for you. Nobody's listening to this guy. You know, there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. Judgment is coming, and there's nothing you can do about it. Let's go to Galatians 3. 3, I think it's 15. I can almost quote it, but I don't even see the right translation, but I'll quote it here. That which has been is already, and that which is will be has already been, and God seeks what has passed by, right? So he seeks what happens in the past, right? So you did that to us. Isaiah 14:1 is coming back to you. That's all I have on that. Shalom.